You ever see something that shakes you to your damn core? Something that stays with you, gnawing at the edges of your mind, no matter how much you drink, how much you tell yourself it wasn't real. I have, and I swear to you, if I could erase that day from my memory, I would. My name's Viggo Norris. I work as a park ranger, originally from Miami, but I've been stationed out in Montana for a couple of years now. I like the quiet, the space, the smell of pine in the air. It beats the city life, at least it did, until what happened on that hike. It was late spring, a storm brewing heavy in the sky. You could feel it in the air, thick and charged, like the whole world was holding its breath. I'd been out on a solo hike, nothing major, just a daily route I like to take before my shift. I carried my usual gear, flashlight, hunting knife, and a pistol, not because I expected trouble, but because out here you never know what you will run into. I should have turned back the moment I heard it. A sound in the distance, deep in the trees. It wasn't the wind. Wind doesn't have a throat. It started as a low growl, long and rolling, almost like a wolf. But there was something wrong about it. Too deep, too aware. I stopped, listened. Then came the howl. I've heard wolves before. This wasn't a wolf. It was distorted, stretched, like something was trying to mimic the sound, but didn't quite know how. It echoed through the trees, sending a shiver up my spine. I tightened my grip on my knife and kept moving, faster this time. It was stupid. I should have turned back, but I didn't. A mile later, I saw it. There was a massive tree just off the trail, old and gnarled, and behind it, something was there. I couldn't see its face, just its silhouette, tall, broad, covered in something dark and matted. Fur maybe? But what made my stomach drop was its eyes, two burning coals locked onto me, watching, not moving. I raised my flashlight, my hands were shaking. The second the beam landed on it, it moved. Not like an animal. Animals twitch, hesitate, adjust their footing. This thing slid behind the tree. Too smooth, too quick. I backed up, slowly. I knew damn well that predators don't usually let themselves be seen unless they want you to see them. I had no idea what I was dealing with, but every instinct screamed that I was being hunted. I took the long way back, sticking close to the trees, ears on high alert. By the time I got back to the cabin, the storm had fully rolled in. Rain hammered the roof, wind howled through the trees. I tried to shake it off, convince myself it was just my imagination, but I couldn't stop thinking about those eyes. And I sure as hell couldn't shake what happened next, because the thing wasn't done with me, not by a long shot. That night, I barely slept. Every time I drifted off, I swore I could hear something outside, just beyond the tree line, but the rain masked everything, so I convinced myself I was paranoid. Big mistake. At around 3 a.m., I woke up to a sound. Scraping. Long, slow, deliberate. Right outside the window. I didn't move. Didn't breathe. Then, thud. Something heavy hit the side of the cabin. Not a branch. Not the wind. Something big. I grabbed my pistol and crept to the window. The rain had slowed just enough for me to hear it. Footsteps, heavy, deliberate, circling the cabin, circling me. I knew better than to shine a light, but even in the dark, I saw it. A massive shadow moved just past the tree line, tall and hunched, shifting unnaturally between 2 legs and 4. And then it spoke. At first I thought it was the wind. Then I heard my own name, Viggo. My stomach turned to ice. The voice was wrong, too deep, too hollow, like someone was trying to force words through a throat that wasn't meant to speak. I clenched my gun. The thing laughed, a deep, guttural, inhuman sound that made my skin crawl. Then it lunged. The wall shook as something massive slammed against it. The window frame groaned under the pressure. I barely had time to react. I fired blindly toward the noise. A shriek tore through the trees. Not human, not animal. Something else entirely. I ran. Didn't think. Didn't grab my pack. Just bolted. The thing crashed through the trees behind me. Its breathing heavy, ragged, closer every second. I didn't stop. Didn't turn back. The storm had turned the ground to mud, but I pushed through, slipping, sliding, feeling it right behind me. Then, lights. The road. I ran straight onto the pavement, just as a pair of headlights cut through the dark. A truck skidded to a stop, horn blaring. I turned, expecting to see the thing right on me, but it was gone. The trees stood silent. The driver, a local rancher, rolled down his window. "You alright, son?" I nodded, breathless, soaked, shaking. I climbed into his truck without a word. He didn't ask any more questions. The next morning, I went back with some other rangers. The cabin was torn up, deep claw marks in the wood. The door was hanging off its hinges. The ground outside was ripped to shreds. But there were no tracks, no blood, nothing. I quit my job a week later. I don't hike alone anymore. Hell, I don't even go into the woods unless I have to. And every so often, when the wind howls just right, I swear I hear something laughing, and it knows my name. You ever read something online, think it's just urban legend, and later wish you hadn't? Yeah, that was me with the Dogman. I'd seen reports, watched a few videos, even read some forum posts where people swore up and down that this thing was real. But I never took it seriously, until that night in Oklahoma. It started with the wind. I was staying with my buddies, Jake and Aaron, at this house on the outskirts of Tulsa. Jake had inherited the place from his uncle, and we thought it'd be fun to take a long weekend off, just unwind, grill some steaks, and maybe do a little night shooting on the property. The place was secluded, barely any neighbors, just miles of open fields and thick patches of woods. The first weird thing happened around 9 p.m. I was in the kitchen making some chili, and I thought I saw something move past the window. A big shadow, too big to be a person, but too fast to be an animal. It was gone before I could process it. I told myself it was the wind playing tricks, but my gut knew better. Jake was out on the porch with a beer, and Aaron was setting up a fire pit in the backyard. I walked out and asked, "You see anything weird just now?" Jake took a swig of his drink, shrugged. "Just the wind, man. This place howls like crazy at night." "Maybe." An hour later, Aaron came inside looking uneasy. "I think someone's out there." Jake and I exchanged glances. Aaron pointed toward the tree line past the backyard. Something big moved through the trees. I thought it was a bear, but I don't know, man. It was walking on two legs. We grabbed a couple of flashlights and stepped onto the porch. I scanned the yard, but all I could see were the trees swaying in the wind. That's when we heard it. A low, deep growl, so guttural it sent a chill straight down my spine. It wasn't a dog, it wasn't a coyote, and it was close. Jake, always the tough guy, shouted, "Hey, get out of here!" and fired his pistol into the air. The gunshot echoed, then silence. Then came the breathing, heavy, labored, right beyond the porch light's reach. Aaron muttered, "Screw this," and backed toward the door. Then we saw it, two yellow eyes, glowing in the darkness, locked onto us from behind the tree. The rest of its body was hidden, but it was tall, at least 7 feet. It didn't move, just watched. A primal fear, settled in my stomach, the kind that tells you you're being hunted. "We go inside, now," I whispered. None of us argued. Back in the house, we locked the doors and turned off the lights. Aaron grabbed his shotgun, Jake had his pistol, and I picked up a hunting knife. Not that I thought it would do much against whatever was out there. We stayed quiet, listening. The wind howled, the trees rustled. Then, footsteps, heavy, slow, circling the house. Scratch, scratch. Something dragged its claws against the walls, moving from one window to the next. Then, a voice, a twisted, almost human voice. "Let me in." I nearly dropped the knife. It was a mimic. Jake's face went pale. "It knows we are in here." We huddled in the living room, guns aimed at the front door. Then, bang! Something massive slammed into the house. The windows shook. Bang! Again, harder this time. The door creaked. Wood splintered. "We can't stay," Aaron hissed. "We make a run for the car." The keys were on the table. I grabbed them, took a deep breath. Bang! A deep guttural snarl ripped through the night. It was pissed now. Jake cracked the door open. On 3. 1. The sound of claws scraping against the wood. 2. A deep inhale right outside. 3. We bolted. The second we stepped outside, I heard it move. Fast. Too fast. Aaron fired a shot toward the trees. The flash of the gun lit up the yard for half a second, just long enough for me to see it. A hulking, wolf-headed thing standing on 2 legs, covered in matted fur, claws as long as knives, teeth, God, the teeth. It lunged. Jake screamed. We ran. I barely had time to unlock the truck before Aaron shoved me inside. Jake jumped into the bed of the truck, and I floored it. The headlights cut through the night as we sped down the dirt road. In the rearview mirror, I saw it give chase. It kept up, mouth open, snarling, saliva dripping from its fangs. Aaron fired another shot out the window, and for the first time, it slowed, just a little. We hit the main road at 60 miles an hour. I didn't stop, didn't look back. We drove straight into town and parked outside the gas station, panting, shaking. "What the hell was that?" Jake whispered. I finally answered. "Dogman." We didn't go back for our stuff. Jake sold the house the next month. I still work in IT, I still live in Chicago, but I don't go looking for things that aren't meant to be found, and I sure as hell don't read about Dogman anymore. Oh wow, that was quite the story. It always really creeps me out when the Dogman can actually say some stuff and say some words. Yeah, but welcome everyone, welcome to Better Tell It. I'm Nick. I'm really happy to have you here. We have a few other stories today. I hope you like them. So now please enjoy the rest of the stories. I never thought I'd be telling a story like this. Hell, I never thought I'd have a reason to. I'm not the kind of guy who believes in ghosts or monsters. And if you'd asked me a few months ago, I'd have laughed at the idea of some backwoods cryptid lurking in the forests of North Carolina. But I was wrong. I was dead wrong. This happened in spring, not too long ago. The weather was nice, a little windy, but nothing crazy. I had some time off from the shop, so I decided to drive out to Bladenboro for a hike. It was just a solo trip. Me, my backpack, a good pair of boots, and the open trail. I liked the quiet. It gave me time to clear my head. Now, I'd never heard of anything weird happening out there. I wasn't big on local folklore, and I sure as hell didn't know Bladenboro had a history of sightings. If I had, maybe I would have picked a different trail. Maybe I wouldn't have gone at all. It started small. I'd been hiking for about an hour, following a dirt path through the pines. The wind was making the trees sway, their branches creaking like old bones. Every now and then, I'd stop to take a drink, listening to the sounds of the forest, birds, leaves rustling, the occasional scampering of some small animal. Then I heard something else, footsteps. They weren't mine, they were slow, deliberate, just beyond the tree line. At first I figured it was a deer, maybe even another hiker, but when I stopped, the footsteps stopped. When I moved, they moved. That's when I started to feel it, the watching. I turned, scanning the trees. Nothing, just thick pines stretching endlessly into the distance. I shook it off and kept walking, but the feeling never left. It sat heavy in my gut, a cold unease that had nothing to do with the wind. Then I saw it. About 30 yards ahead, half hidden behind a tree, something was staring at me. At first I thought it was a person, some tall, thin guy, just standing there, peering out from behind the bark. But the longer I looked, the more I realized something was wrong. Its head was too high, its body too still, and its eyes, Jesus, its eyes, they were yellow, glowing like an animal's caught in headlights. But it wasn't night, and there were no headlights, just the afternoon sun filtering through the branches. I took a step back. The thing ducked behind the tree. Not in a natural way, not like someone avoiding eye contact. It moved too fast, too precise, like it knew I'd seen it. I didn't stick around to get a better look. I turned and kept walking, faster this time. I told myself it was just some trick of the light, that maybe I was seeing things. But deep down, I knew better. Something was out there, and it was watching me. I should have turned back. Instead, I kept going, trying to shake off the nerves. I walked for another mile or so, stopping only when I heard it. Again, the footsteps. This time, they were closer. I froze. The wind had died down, leaving only silence. No birds, no rustling leaves, just an eerie, unnatural stillness. Then, from somewhere in the trees, I heard breathing. Deep, low, wrong. I turned slowly, heart hammering in my chest. There was nothing there, just the forest stretching behind me, but I knew it was in the shadows. I took off, not running, but walking fast. I needed to get out, to get back to my car. Every step I took, I felt it closing in, like a predator herding its prey. And then the smell hit me. It was awful, rotting meat, like something long dead left baked in the sun. My stomach churned. I covered my nose, trying not to gag. That's when I saw it again, closer this time. Standing in the trees, half hidden by the dark, it was watching me. I didn't get a good look, just a flash of matted fur, long limbs and those glowing eyes. But that was enough. I turned and ran. I don't know how long I sprinted. Minutes, hours. All I remember is the terror, the overwhelming feeling that something was behind me, closing in fast. I couldn't hear it, but I could feel it. The smell, the cold sweat on my skin, the instinct screaming at me to run. And then my car. It was parked just off the road, exactly where I'd left it. I fumbled for my keys, my hands shaking so bad I could barely get the door open. I threw myself inside, slamming the lock, just as something moved in the trees behind me. I turned the ignition. The engine sputtered. No, 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 come on. Another turn, nothing, and then a thud. Something hit the back of my car. I didn't look. I couldn't. I just kept turning the key, praying to every god I didn't believe in that the damn thing would start. Thud. The whole vehicle rocked. Then out of the corner of my eye, I saw it. A shape, massive and wrong, standing at the edge of the forest. I didn't get a full look, but I saw the legs, too long, too bent, like a dog standing on its hind legs, and those yellow eyes gleaming in the dark. The engine roared to life. I slammed it into drive and peeled out, tires screeching as I tore down the road. I didn't stop, not until I was miles away, not until the trees were gone and the night swallowed the thing behind me. I never went back. I don't know what I saw that day. I don't want to know. I told a few people, but no one believed me. They said it was a bear, a trick of the light, maybe even my own damn imagination. But I know the truth. I know what I saw, and I know it saw me. If you ever find yourself alone in those woods, do yourself a favor. Don't look into the trees, and if you hear something stalking you, just run. Have you ever heard something in the woods at night and just know deep down that it isn't anything natural? That's what happened to us, and I swear to you, I've never been so scared in my entire life. So this was last spring. A few buddies and I decided to rent a cabin in the Oklahoma woods for a weekend getaway. It was supposed to be all about grilling, drinking, and unwinding away from the city life. Nothing too crazy, just some fresh air, fishing, and occasional beer-fueled story around the fire. I even brought along my dog, Roach, a mutt with more attitude than sense, but damn if he isn't loyal. Now, I'm not one to get spooked easily. Hell, I spent half my nights watching horror movies like an idiot and still sleep just fine. But before this trip, I'd been reading up on local folklore, just for fun. The Dogman kept coming up in my searches. A hulking half-wolf, half-man creature that people swore lurked in the deep woods of the Midwest. Some said it was a spirit, others claimed it was flesh and blood, a living nightmare that could rip a man apart in seconds. I laughed it off at first, but yeah, I don't laugh about that shit anymore. The rain started around sunset on our second night, a heavy constant downpour that made everything feel claustrophobic. The kind of rain that drowns out every other sound except for its own hammering against the roof. We were sitting around the fire pit, finishing off some burgers, when Roach suddenly tensed up, his ears perked, body rigid, eyes locked on the tree line like he was seeing something we couldn't. That's when we heard it, this deep, guttural, huffing sound, almost like a bear, but not. Probably just a deer, my buddy Matt muttered, though his voice lacked conviction. Then a branch snapped, loud, close. Roach let out a low growl, his hackles raised. I grabbed the flashlight and aimed it toward the noise, but the rain made it impossible to see more than a few feet past the trees. Maybe we should head inside, said Tony, the most sensible of our group. None of us argued. We locked up, shut the windows, and huddled in the living room with a few beers, trying to shake the unease. Roach kept pacing, occasionally letting out soft whines. A couple of hours passed with nothing but the rain for company, then another noise. Something heavy thudded against the side of the cabin. We froze. That wasn't the wind, Matt whispered. Another thud, this time from the opposite side of the cabin. It was circling us. I turned off the lights. It wasn't some dumb superstition, just logic. If something was outside, I didn't want to give it a clear view of us while we sat in here like helpless idiots. Then we heard it, a deep rumbling growl, right outside the cabin. I had my hunting knife, Tony had his pistol, just a little .38 revolver, but still better than nothing. Matt grabbed a fire poker. We sat there, gripping our weapons, barely breathing. The growling stopped, then the front porch creaked. Something was standing there. I could just barely make out a silhouette through the rain-smeared glass. tall, hulking, wrong. And then it let out this sound, half a snarl, half a scream. It didn't sound like a coyote. It didn't sound like a wolf. It sounded almost human, but not. Roach barked wildly, throwing himself at the door. And that's when the thing ran. We didn't hear it again for a while. The storm masked any movement, and we started to think, maybe, just maybe, it had left. We were wrong. Around 3 a.m., we heard the scraping. Something was clawing at the back door. Roach went ballistic, growling and barking like a mad dog. The door, solid wood, shuddered under the force of whatever was on the other side. Claw marks began to appear, long gashes tearing through the surface. Tony raised his revolver. "We have to make a run for the car," I said. "Now." Matt shook his head. "That thing is fast." "Yeah, so are bullets," Tony muttered. Then the door splintered. A massive clawed hand, not a paw, but a hand, tore through, fingers tipped with black, curved talons. I fired up my flashlight, aiming it at the creature, and for the first time we saw it. 7 feet tall, matted fur, drenched from the rain, yellow glowing eyes, a face like a wolf, but twisted, smarter, more human. And when it grinned, we saw its teeth, long, jagged, meant for tearing flesh. Roach lunged at the door just as it pushed through. The Dogman swiped its claws, ripping through the air inches away from my dog's head. I grabbed Roach, dragging him back, and Tony fired. The gunshot rang out, deafening in the small cabin. The creature recoiled, snarling in pain. It bled. That was enough for me. "Go!" I shouted. We bolted. I grabbed Roach. Matt kicked the back door open, and we sprinted into the storm. The rain was thick, blinding. The mud sucked at our feet as we ran toward the truck. I could hear it behind us, crashing through the trees, fast, too fast. Tony fired 2 more shots. I don't think he hit it, but it slowed just enough for us to reach the truck. We piled in, slamming the doors. Tony jammed the keys in the ignition, and nothing. The truck wouldn't start. The Dogman emerged from the tree line, moving on all fours now, its glowing eyes locked onto us. I've never prayed harder in my life. Tony twisted the key again. The truck roared to life. The Dogman lunged. We tore out of there, mud flying as the tires struggled to grip. In the mirror, I saw it give chase for a few seconds, but then it stopped. Just stood there, watching us go, its yellow eyes burning through the rain. We didn't stop driving until we hit town. I don't think any of us spoke for a long time. I did research after that, more sightings, reports from hunters and hikers. Turns out we weren't the only ones who had seen it, and now I believe every single one of those stories. I don't know why it let us go. Maybe it just wanted to scare us. Maybe it was playing with us. But I do know one thing. I'm never going back to those woods. And if you're ever out there and you hear something stalking in the rain, run away. Thank you for making it this far into the video. I really like the stories, but what I can take from them is that you must keep your cars in good running order. Thank you again for sticking around. Please like, drop a comment, and now have a good night.